Hello, welcome back to the channel. So today I have my favorite books I read in 2021 video, and I'm so excited. I've been waiting to film this, but you know, life has been crazy and I have been really going through it lately. So today we're talking about the best books. Now I wanted to do like my top 21 books of 2021, but I literally could not narrow it down. I think I read 116 books this year, which is like incredible. I've never read so much in my entire life. How did I do it? I don't know. Basically, I spend all my free time either reading or listening to audiobooks because I don't have a social life. And yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, like I was saying, I tried to narrow it down and I honestly just couldn't. I had so many 5-star reads, 4.5-star reads, and there were just some of them where I just couldn't justify taking them off the list. So I ended up with like my top 23 favorites of 2021 or something like that. But or 24. I think it's my top 24. Anyways, we're just gonna get into the video. I think this is like a mixture of genres, so mainly thriller and horror, but then there's a couple like historical fiction, contemporary, there's like a nonfiction thrown in there. So I think I'm gonna group them by category and then leave the timestamps linked down below. So if you just want to see thriller, if you just want to see horror, or if you want to see the miscellaneous category, check the timestamp. So we're going to start out with thriller, which is the genre that I've read the most of in 2021. This is in no particular order, okay? These are all just like random books thrown on my bed. And if I don't have the physical book, it's because it's at my boyfriend's apartment. Basically any book that I think he would like, I leave at his apartment, and that's why he has 95 books that he has to read. Anyways, even though this is in no particular order, I'm starting out with my favorite book that I've read this year, and it's Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This will be of no surprise to you if you know me. This book is just like my everything. It's like my brand at this point. I'm constantly raving about this book. So this is basically about two sisters. When they were younger, their other sister, their third sister, went missing, and now we find out the one sister's husband is, he's murdered in the beginning of this book, and you find out the husband being murdered and her sister going missing are kind of linked in a way. And basically, I don't want to give anything away, but this is definitely look up the trigger warnings. This book was just amazing. It was everything I've ever wanted in a thriller and more. Karen Slaughter just takes it to a level where most authors are afraid to go. And even though, you know, her books are heavy. Like, these are like heavy, emotional, impacting books, and I just really love that in a thriller. I love a thriller that makes me feel, because I'm kind of like an emotionless robot and I'm just like depressed all the time. So yeah, any book that makes me feel something is always a favorite of mine, and I think this is the first thriller that actually made me cry. Like the last chapter, if you know, you know, I cried, and I never cry ever. So yeah, this book, my all-time favorite of this year. Next, another thriller favorite of mine, Jennifer Hillier's Jar of Hearts. So this one is about a serial killer. It's about this girl who, in high school, she was dating this notorious serial killer, and her best friend went missing. So now, years and years later, they find her best friend's, I guess, remains around her property. So now we're following from like multiple different perspectives. We're seeing this main character in jail and her experience in jail, and then coming out of jail, and now there's more and more people being murdered. We're trying to figure out like okay, is he still around? Is this serial killer still around? Is it someone else? Like, what is going on? Such a gripping, fast-paced thriller. I flew through this in like a day. I just absolutely love the writing in this book, and it led me to read all of Jennifer Hillier's books. Next is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. Now, this is her newest release from 2021, and I know everyone has been raving about this book, and rightfully so. This book was so fun to read. Like, from the first chapter, you are just thrown in there, and the first chapter just grips you, and I love that. I love fast-paced books that just start out with a bang, and this one started with a bang. So we're following this book from multiple different perspectives, and basically this woman and her daughter go missing. So you're trying to figure out what happened, why did they go missing, did someone take them, did someone murder them, etc. So now in the beginning of this book, we find out this young girl who was like locked in a freaking basement or something. I don't even remember, but she comes back and everyone's like, oh, it's the missing girl who's back. So we're trying to figure out, like, or unravel her story and figure out the story of the woman that's missing, and then there's another woman that goes missing, and you're just trying to figure out what's going on in this suburban neighborhood. I'm not doing a really good job at selling this book, but just go read it. Okay, it was so good. Next is another Karen Slaughter. Karen Slaughter has become my queen in 2021, and I'm so excited to read like all of her books. I still have 2 more of her standalones to read, and then I'm gonna start the Grant County series. So I'm like so excited and looking forward to reading her backlist. But her newest book from 2021, False Witness, is one of my faves that I've read this year. It's so freaking good. It's not as graphic as Pretty Girls, in my opinion, but it's still really graphic and like has a lot of trigger warnings with like rape, molestation, like sexual assault of minors, etc. So yeah, definitely you are warned before you get into Karen Slaughter. Look up the trigger warnings. But this book, we follow 2 sisters yet again, and basically this one sister is a defense attorney, and she has to defend a man who is being accused of raping multiple women. So she finds out that he requested to have her specifically as his lawyer, and she's trying to figure out why. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Just trust me. Once again, the ending made me cry. Like, something about Karen Slaughter, like, her writing is just so real. Like, she just paints the picture so beautifully. Her writing is fucking flawless, and she just gets you so emotionally invested in these characters, and I'm always so emotional reading her thriller books, which normally thrillers are like, I don't know, I've become like immune to them. So when a thriller actually makes me feel something, that's when I'm like, oh, it's a masterpiece. So I love this one. My next thriller is a Riley Sager. It's Lock Every Door. So this one, we're following this girl who is apartment sitting at this bougie ass apartment complex, and she notices the one tenant who is also apartment sitting goes missing, and she's noticing just like this complex is really sketchy and the people that live there are really sketchy. So we're slowly like unraveling what is going on at this place and what happened to the other tenant. So I really just loved this one because it has some horror aspects in there, and I was just totally blown away by the ending. I was not expecting it, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it was just so out there and crazy that I was just blown away. Next, speaking of thrillers that were just like a fun time, Not a Happy Family by Sherry Lapina. I just had fun reading this book. Do I think it's a literary masterpiece? No, but it was just so much fun, and I just really love the whodunit aspect. So basically we're following this dysfunctional family, and in the beginning of the book they have like Easter dinner together and the parents are murdered. So you're trying to figure out who in this family murdered the parents. So you're flipping perspectives, and every chapter is like a different person's perspective, and not even every chapter, it's like every page. So you're just like constantly flipping back and forth, and I kind of guessed it from the beginning, but I just think it was overall a fun read. Next, another new release from 2021 that I ended up loving was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I just love Alice Feeney. I just started reading her books this year. I sound like a crazy person, but I just started reading her books this year. I have 2 more to get through. She only has 4 books so far that I know of. So I'm a little late on the bandwagon here, but this book is just, I don't know, it was so entertaining. Once again, I just love entertaining thrillers. I don't know, it's like either I'm bored with thrillers lately, or I just like when they're fast-paced and entertaining. That's all. So this is about a man and a woman in this marriage, and the man has a condition, I forget what it's called, but he suffers from face blindness. So every anniversary they exchange like traditional anniversary gifts, and then she writes a letter. So we're kind of following this couple through letters, and you're reading like the letter from year 1, year 2, year 3, so on and so forth, and you kind of see what's going on in their marriage. And basically they win this trip, or this like getaway to this, I forget what the hell it was. It was like a cottage or something. No, it was like a church. I don't know. They win some kind of weekend getaway, and it's in this like sketchy, deserted, blizzard-filled area. There's just like snow everywhere, and it's during a blizzard, and you're just like following them on this like sketchy journey, and they have some like deep-rooted secrets going on in their marriage, and you're just learning things through letters and the way that this couple interacts with one another, and I loved it. I loved the twist. I love what ended up happening, and it was just such a fun read. Next is another Alice Feeney that I just had such a fun time reading, and it's Sometimes I Lie. I'm probably the last person on earth to have read this book. Like literally the last person on planet Earth. But you know what? I did it. I finally got around to reading it, and that sparked my Alice Feeney journey. So this one is about a woman who, she wakes up and she's in a coma, and she doesn't remember what happened. She knows that she was in an accident. She thinks her husband might have something to do with it, or her sister, but she's not sure what happened. So we're kind of piecing the puzzle together, and she thinks like her husband might be having an affair with the sister. Like there's all weird family dynamics going on here, and I love fucked up family dynamics because hello, story of my life. And basically we are learning her story through past and present, and kind of figuring out what's going on in this relationship and her family. So yeah, just super engaging, and I don't know, I couldn't put this one down. I think I read this in like one day. It was super quick, and I absolutely loved it. Next is kind of a controversial one. I don't hear too many people talking about this, and if I do, not everyone loves it like I did, and it is What Lies Between Us by John Mars. I've read a couple John Mars books, and this was actually my favorite. Like everyone always talks about The One, which is a fantastic book, by the way. I really did love that book, but I actually like this one better, and everyone thinks that I'm fucking insane. But you know what? Trust me. Just trust me. Try this book. If you hate it, it's fine. I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It's about a woman, actually about 2 women, and the one woman is locked in her attic. Yeah, she's like chained and locked up in the attic. And so you're trying to figure out what is going on with these 2 women and why they have such a strange relationship, and what is going on with their past that this one woman has the other one chained up in her attic. So that's all I'm gonna say about this one. I absolutely loved it. It's like a psychological thriller, and sometimes I just like books that are a little bit weird, a little bit fucked up, a little bit like, what? I don't know. I see some people hating on this book and I don't know why, because it was everything that I wanted at the time that I read this. So next, a book that I finally got around to reading this year is Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I hate these stupid little stickers here. Like, Target, can you please stop doing that? Like, why? Anyways, this is a book about a fucked up relationship. I mean, do you see a theme here? There's a theme going on in this video. Basically, there's this couple, Jack and Grace, that everyone thinks they're like this amazing couple goals, you know the type, right? But behind closed doors, there's something deeper and darker going on in this relationship. I was kind of like, is that the only thing that's happening in this book? Like, I was expecting something like crazy, but then when I was done with the book and actually sat down and thought about it, I was like, you know what? I fucking love this book because there's nothing scarier than an average man. That's just like the theme of all my books here. Like, there is nothing scarier than an average man. Like, no horror book could ever scare me than an average man, you know? So definitely go read that book if you feel the same way. Yeah. Intensity by Dean Koontz. This is another thriller that I read. I read this book in January and it just like sparked my love for reading again, because I've always been a reader, but like I said, I never read as many books as I have this year, and this book like really kicked it off for me and just like inspired me to keep reading fiction, because I was like reading a lot of nonfiction for a while. And this fucking book, so good, so good. Like, Dean Koontz is hit or miss for me, and a lot of his like older books are so good. Like, they're so good. So this book, we're following this girl and she goes to sleep over at a friend's house and basically wakes up and everyone is being murdered in the house by this serial killer. So she actually follows the serial killer. She like hides and then follows the serial killer out to his van. She gets in the van with him and she's just like in this like trailer with a serial killer. And so the whole book, you're just following her, following the serial killer, and so much crazy shit is going on. Like, it is so good. I don't know why more people don't talk about this book. I feel like no one knows about this book and everyone needs to know about it. I loved it so much. It was action-packed. It was just what I've been looking for in a thriller, and I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it if you like things with like serial killer tropes. I feel like that book is probably everything that people wished Survive the Night by Riley Sager was. I personally like that book. Like, please don't burn me at the stake, okay? It wasn't that bad. I mean, I can see why everyone hates it, but I thought it was pretty good. I know, I'm just horrible. Like, all the books that I love, everyone hates, and then all the books that I hate, everyone loves. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, Intensity, I feel like people wish that was Survive the Night, you know? And then last but not least, we have The Plot. So The Plot is a book that came out, did it come out in the beginning of 2021? I think it did. So we are following the perspective of this like English teacher, and he has a student that comes up with like the most brilliant plot that he's ever heard of. So years and years later, he is a struggling author and he can't write anything that people enjoy anymore. So he looks up this student that had this brilliant idea, and the student passed away. He finds the obituary. So he decides to steal the plot of this book. And so then you start getting like little chapters of the book that he stole and that he's writing. There's like this plot twist at the end that is so fucking good. I was obsessed with the ending, and it is a slow burn. Like the first half of the book I was like, okay, like it was very, very slow and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but the second half just takes off. I just finished the second half like immediately. It was just so good. And the plot twist of the plot, so good. Okay, did I get all the thrillers? Yes. Moving on to horror. So there's a couple of books that I don't physically have with me here, so I'm just gonna be like glancing down at my list a lot. So the first one is another Riley Sager, Home Before Dark. I'm putting this in the horror category. It's like I would say it's more of a horror than a thriller. Some people classified it as a thriller, whatever. So in this book, we're following this girl, Maggie, and basically Maggie inherits this house from her dad that she grew up in, and it said that the house is haunted. So her dad actually wrote this book about the haunted house, and we're actually getting a mixture of perspectives. So we're following her perspective, and then it also gives us chapters from her father's book and what was going on in the house. So you're trying to figure out, like, did these things actually happen? Was it fabricated? Like what, you know, what is the truth basically is what you're trying to figure out. And I just love this book. The ending absolutely blew me away, and it sparked my obsession with Riley Sager, and this book was just fucking brilliant and I loved every second of it. So if you like paranormal shit, go read this book. Next is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix has just become my love in 2021. Justin, my boyfriend, and I have just become obsessed with him. We've read every single one of his books. I own every single one of his books, and he's just so fucking good. This one is about these two girls. We're following them from the time they were children until they are teenagers, and they're best friends. And the one girl notices that the other one isn't quite herself lately. And she's trying to figure out, like, what the fuck is going on with her bestie? You know, like, she's acting really weird and shit. And basically, she has to perform an exorcism on her. I just absolutely loved this book, and the way that Grady Hendrix writes, he tied everything together so well in this book. Like, this friendship was so, like, well built in this book. Like, throughout the book, I feel like these characters just grew on me so much to the point where I cared about them, because you get to learn, like, their whole life together. And I don't know, just something about these characters. I was literally crying. Like, the last chapter, he summarized everything like so beautifully at the end. Like, he ties it all together, like when they're adults, and I cried. He's just so good. Like, I just love Grady Hendrix. Trust me, you have to read this book. And the 80s references, I absolutely loved. He had all these, like, each chapter is a different 80s song, and you're, like, following them with their, like, E.T. obsession as children, and I loved it. The other Grady Hendrix that I loved was the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Now, this one we are following a woman who's in a, like, true crime book club, and she notices that the new neighbor that moves in is really fucking weird, and she's the only one that thinks he's really fucking weird, and everyone in the book club and all their husbands are like, what is wrong with you? He's wonderful, we love him. Like, they're obsessed with this man. And she's like, no, I think he's a vampire. And everyone's like, bitch, you're crazy. And she insists that he is a vampire, and she's trying to convince the other ladies in the book club to believe her. And you are just following her journey, and it is so crazy. Like, the stuff that happens in this book is crazy. It's wild. I absolutely loved it, and it's everything that I've ever wanted in a book. I loved it. Once again, the ending was just beautifully summarized and in a little package, you know? Love it. Next is one of my all-time favorite books. If you watch this reading vlog, you know. If you know, you know. I'll leave it linked. But this book, is Brother by Anya Alborn. Literally one of the best books I've ever read in my life. I fucking love it. I'll recommend it till the day I die. It's about this family who captures, tortures, murders, and then eats women. And our main character is this 19-year-old boy that we're following, and he is essentially kidnapped by this family and like adopted into this family, and they make him capture these women, they make him clean up after their murders, and he consciously is like, I don't want to be part of this anymore, you know? And he starts to fall for this girl that he meets, and he's like, I don't know what to do because like morally I can't date anyone. Like no one is going to be okay with what my family and I do. So we're following the story of him and his family, and it is so fucking good. It's so good. Literally one of the best books I've ever read in my life. My other all-time favorite book that I've read this year is Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez. Now this book, it's so fucked up. Like, it's so fucked up. Once again, if you have trigger warnings, don't read this. If you think Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter was a lot, don't read this. This book, we're following this couple, and basically this woman gets separated from her husband and is told by her kidnapper that she's going to be the star of his snuff film, which if you don't know what that is, it's a porn where the person gets murdered at the end, and the whole book is her trying to survive and the things that she does in order to survive and the morally fucked up thing that she does in order to survive. It's crazy. It's really wild. It's really graphic, gory, torture, murder, rape. It's like pretty disgusting. Like really, really, really disgusting, but it's so good. It's so thrilling. And the kind of like the ride that this book takes you, and I can't admit, like, J.F. Gonzalez did such a great job at writing the main character in this book. It was just flawless, amazing. If you can handle really fucked up, disturbing shit, I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. I can't shut up about it. Everyone's like, what the fuck is wrong with you that you're so obsessed with this snuff film book? And like, listen, it's good. Like I said, I'm getting bored with thrillers because the same things just keep happening over and over and over. And I just want to read my disturbing horror books. I don't know. Okay, next is The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. Now this one I read and I finished this in one day. It's a short book. I think it's only like 200 and some pages. It's so good. It's about this man who goes into this like mental hospital, and he's a psychiatrist, and everyone keeps talking about this one patient that everyone's like afraid of because people go in his room and they end up like dying or killing themselves or something tragic happens to them. So everyone thinks this patient is like crazy and possessed, and like no one will go treat him basically. And this doctor's like, well, I'm gonna go in there and treat him. So we're kind of getting like Silent Patient vibes, but horror. Silent Patient, but make it horror. It's just like wild. It's so suspenseful, and then what ends up happening, I was like, what the fuck? Then we have The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. Jennifer McMahon is an author that I discovered this year, and I love her. So this book, we're following the perspective of this person in present day, and weird things are happening in present day. And then we're also getting letters from like the 1800s, I believe. And we're getting these diary entries from the people that lived in this house, from the woman that lived there back in the day, and the weird, creepy shit that was going on. And something tragic happened in her family, and the two end up linking together, and that's kind of all that I'm gonna say. Just trust me, it's a good one. A lot of people compared it to Pet Sematary by Stephen King, but I've actually never read that book. I know. What is wrong with me, right? I'm actually going to be reading it in January for a reading vlog, so be on the lookout for some Stephen King content in 2022, because I have like 20 Stephen King books on my shelf that I have to read, and so much So much to do. Next is Nosferatu by Joe Hill. Speaking of Stephen King, this is Stephen King's son, and I read this in the month of December because it's kind of like a little Christmassy book, but we're following this, basically he's a serial kidnapper, and he is taking these children and bringing them to Christmas land where they have fun all year round and Christmas is every day. And so he's just like this creepy serial kidnapper, and we're also following this girl named Vic, and we're going along on her journey of trying to find this man, and it's crazy. It's a wild time. I flew through this one. Like, it's a pretty thick book and I flew through it. I absolutely loved it. So good. Next, we'll do my sci-fi pick of the year, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I just finished this book about a couple days ago and I loved it. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not because I'm not that much into like heavy sci-fi, and this book had a lot of science talk, like a lot, but it was so good regardless. Half the time I didn't know what he was talking about, but we're following a guy who basically wakes up from a coma and he's on a spaceship and he's trying to figure out what he's doing there and what the purpose of him being there is, which is basically a mission to save Earth. So that's all I'm gonna say. Then I have two historical fictions. The first one being The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one I feel like is almost everyone's favorite. I read this and I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it because it's not really my thing, but it was brilliant. So we're following this like movie star, Evelyn Hugo, and she is coming out with this story about her life, and she's doing this interview for a biography, and basically we're just learning about her life and her 7 husbands, which sounds boring, but it's so good. I wish I could tell you the main plot twist, but I can't or it will spoil it, but it has such great... Just go read it, okay? And I have The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which is a historical fiction about World War II. So we're following these two sisters throughout World War II, and they're both vastly different. The one sister is kind of staying at home to take care of her children, and basically the Nazis are there and taking over the house, and she is just trying to do what she can to survive. And then we have the other sister who's more of like a rebel, and we're following her as she kind of tries to like fight against the system. And yeah, it's a very emotional, powerful book, and I bawled my eyes out. I finished it in like 2 days, and it's a chunky book. This is the book that I read right after I had surgery in February, and it was so good. I can't even like think about this book without wanting to cry. The ending was everything. This book was everything. I didn't think I was gonna like it. I was like, I don't want to read this book. And I absolutely loved it. I love Kristen Hanna, and this book just gave me all the feels. Then finally, my last recommendation is my nonfiction book, which is Unbroken. Unbroken is about World War II. Again, it's a nonfiction book, so this actually happened, and our main character, Louis Zamperini, and he is in the army and is in an airplane, and the airplane crashes, and basically him and the other guys on the plane end up stranded, floating on this raft for like months and months and months, I think. It was just insane. Like, reading this story was fucking insane, and then they end up floating to a Japanese war camp, and he becomes a prisoner of war, and you're following this journey, and it is so fucked up. Like, the things that they did to people and do to people is just so heartbreaking and so traumatizing. Like, I can't even imagine. It fucks me up even just reading it, let alone being in that position. It's so heartbreaking, and you're reading about him essentially being tortured, and it's just like, it's hard to stomach, but the ending is fantastic, and if you know anything about the story, he ends up surviving the whole situation, obviously, because he lived to tell this story and have this book written, but so incredible, just amazing. Okay, we finally did it. We got through it. Those were my top 24 books. I think it was 24, I don't know. My top books of 2021. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in my next one, and I can't wait to go into 2022 together, reading books, talking about books, and it's gonna be fun. So have a great feeling it's gonna be another great reading year. So let me know any videos you'd like to see in the year ahead in 2022, if you have any recommendations, things you like, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!